Welcome to the Heart Rate Variability Podcast, where we explore the exciting science behind heart rate variability. The material discussed in this podcast should not be taken as medical advice. Please check with your medical provider to make sure any suggestions or strategies are right for you. Visit us at the OptimalHRV.com website to learn more about the Optimal HRV app, download a free copy of Matt's book, Heart Rate Variability, and also get show notes and additional resources around heart rate variability and its applications.
Hello, everybody, and welcome again to another episode of the Heart Rate Variability Podcast. Jeff Summers here back with Matt Bennett. How are you, sir?
Hey, Jeff. Thanks for holding down the fort the last couple of weeks. Letting me go on vacation without a podcast recording. Highly appreciated. And I tell you what, it's really fun to listen to episodes of this podcast that I'm not on. So
it doesn't happen very often.
You did us well over the last couple of weeks, and I'm really excited to get back on the show and talk to a guest today who shares my passion for some of this work in education. So it's a great episode to get back in the mix on.
Yeah, well, you missed all of two, I think, for the entire series of 100 or however many there are now. So, I think that's well deserved.
Well, after the last episode, if people didn't listen, if you saw, I don't care about heart rate variability in dentistry, and you're like, who cares? Go listen to that episode. I have been to the dentist. I'll disclose in a couple of years. I'm going to make an appointment with the good doc. Dr. Turner, I believe, was her name. Yeah, holy heck. So if you skip that episode, go back, listen. I learned so much with it. So, and I've got a new dentist if she's taking new patients because I need to, I'm well overdue. So
that's time. That's right. Well, and excited to have you back, but also very, very excited to have another guest on the podcast, as you said, doing some really, really cool work. So, John, thank you for joining.
My pleasure.
We're very excited to have you. As we mentioned, really excited to tell your story, let people know what you're doing. Some really phenomenal work with some kids that need you. So, maybe if you don't mind, start just with an introduction. A little bit about your background, kind of give us a little bit of background here so that the audience kind of knows where you came from before learning about what you're doing now.
Okay, well, I got here through kind of a winding path. I guess that happens a lot in life. And for about 50 years, I was involved in the automotive industry. As a young person, I worked as a mechanic and later on got into management. Went into the Navy, finished the Navy tour and during the Vietnam era, and ended up with the GI Bill going to college, and I got a degree in business administration, and then ended up in management in the technology. It took more courses, always learning. I'm a lifelong learner, and so did that up until 4 years ago. Now, how I got involved in education really is through my wife, Peggy. Peggy has been in administration the whole time we've been married, just about. And she started right after our sons. Actually, she became interested in the public school system when my sons were in school. And so she was, the mom, the party, and all the stuff. And then eventually started working there. She had a career prior in the mortgage business. She worked for a bank that was as a mortgage document type person. She was actually a vice president at the Michigan National Bank. I was hoping she could support the family, but it turned out she made me continue to work. So anyway, it turns out that during that time I met a lot of really interesting people that were in education, because it seems like our network of friends were all part of the school district, as life went on, and also another big factor is that when I met Peggy, she keeps coming back into the story, so she's a pretty important person here. But
Absolutely.
when I met Peggy, Peggy had a brother, and when I say brother, he's passed, but he was impacted by a type of epilepsy that left him with brain damage, and so he was a special needs person. And Peggy made it clear that if we were going to get married, that Jeff was coming along with us, that it was her obligation to take care of her brother. So our house was modified for, handicap access and all those things. And we spent time working with the various agencies that worked with him. Eventually it got to the point where he had to go to group home. He did. And so we assisted there to group home and worked with that population for a number of years. And when I retired from the automotive industry with Ford, it was an opening. There were some openings that were coming up in the school district as a para-educator in special ed, working with a population from 18 to 26. I thought that'd be perfect for me. That's something I really wanted to do. It's a passion. I was so impressed working with these individuals. I'm sorry, I'm mixing up vehicles and individuals.
It works with all of the above, right?
But I mean, it's not. So anyway, I was just drawn to working with them. Very, very impressive. So resilient. Such more than that. I gained more than the help that I gave them. I learned from them, and so I wanted to work with that population. It just turned out that a job came up, and I applied for it, and I got it. So that I interviewed, and before I retired, I had that job. And actually, there was on the committee that interviewed me, that there was a student on it, and he was highly impacted by autism, and he wanted to make sure that I was available in the evenings for the special events that they had. And I said, yes, absolutely. So and he said, okay, I think you'll be fine then.
That's great.
But yeah, is it true? And so anyway, I got there, we started, and it was so great. And the first PD that I was sent to was put on by a person, Jessica Minahan, who works with HRV. She's a behavioral specialist. And so I looked at the waveforms, and how she was saying that that anxiety is the root, really, of a lot of behaviors, and most behaviors. And it's a language. It's almost the children are speaking out, and they don't have the social skills to interact, and so with behaviors is their method of communication. And how heart rate variability can help that almost more than anything. So I just saw that. I saw those waveforms, electromagnetic fields. I'm so used to that. I've been working with it for many, many years, and it all looked like, oh my gosh. And
this makes sense.
Yeah. And so I got into it, I got into it, jumped in with both feet, I mean, and so took courses and got certification, went through a trauma informed course, and some other things, BCIA, biofeedback technician training. And that's where I came in contact with Ina Karzan, and her work was a big part of that program with BCIA. And so here we are, here we are. I use the tool with that population, 18 to 26. I use the tool. I can tell you one individual, very aggressive young man, trauma, some kind of trauma in his life. It's not really important what it was specifically because
Sure.
it's just not important. You know, because we can't get rid of the trauma. We can give you the tools to deal with it, the tools to process it, and live with it, to go on. And HRV can do that. So he would get into these violent rages, and I was allowed to, and it was so wonderful to be able to work with him. And basically I was the only one allowed in the room, and pretty much, I mean, he really was a violent guy. And but we would start breathing, and we'd calm down, and it was just amazing, absolutely amazing. And
Wow.
and his demeanor changed, and it was just remarkable. So I was feeling pretty good about my decision to do the work, to learn HRV, to learn about HRV, to work with this population. Well, then COVID hit, and one of the things that we did was take the students out to places of business to give them occupational training. Great. So maybe we have a student who could learn how to bag groceries, or work in a pet store, stocking shelves, or who knows?
Sure.
It could be an accountant. I mean,
exactly.
Some people that are impacted with autism have some. I mean, cognitive ability is there. Yeah, it's just accessing it. Sure. That's the difficulty. So that's where the hold up is a roadblock, so to speak. And wow, our student population decreased, and I didn't have much seniority, so I got displaced. So I ended up with K through 2, big, right, the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah, no kidding. Could be more different.
Yeah, and I'm saying, oh my gosh.
For sure.
I said K through 2.
What am I gonna do?
That was Peggy's job. I didn't know it. I don't know about it. And
you're about to find out.
Yeah, and I mean that's like diapers and stuff even sometimes. Yeah. So, sure. But actually we had it with the 18 to 26 too. Yeah, that was
So, I changed some of those in my career as well. Not highlights nor details will I give, but yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I got there, and these children, it struck me, they do not have to end up like the kids in the transition center at 26. It doesn't have to be that way. Yeah. We have an opportunity right now to change their life, to really make a change. And it's something so simple as the introduction to HRV. Now, there's so many possibilities with HRV. I mean, there's so many things when you hear what I'm doing with it, you'll probably say, well, that's not what our tool's for, or it's a different way to look at it.
That's it.
Maybe not.
It's the beauty, but not at all. I mean, what you're doing is exactly what Matt, and I'm putting words in your mouth here, but this is exactly the kind of impact we hoped with Optimal, and using, HRV tracking, biofeedback, all of those tools to not only know what it looks like, but also make it better for populations that don't often have access to it. So
yeah, and my lesson, and I'm hearing this in your voice too, is like with neurodiverse populations, I think historically there's something wrong with them because they're not succeeding in our environment. So just for our listeners, I ran a school for the similar population. Usually our students were too violent for the public school system. So we were in some ways their last hope. before they got institutionalized, potentially for a lifetime. Like it was a very, that was sort of our baseline student. And, well, I didn't have heart rate variability at the time, but I just saw that, if we could find the right mix of interventions, and it was so unique to each individual, which I found just like, it's still been my favorite population to work with in my 25 plus year career now. And, I didn't have heart rate variability as a tool to say, okay, does this occupational therapy intervention, does a bouncy chair work? Does brushing work? Does, quiet and noise canceling headphones work? Because what, would work for one student might get our butts kicked with another one because it'd be triggering for them. And so that's why I was so excited to connect with you, because I think that this is a population that often gets ignored. And as you're saying, once they hit the 18 to 21-year-old kind of piece, sometimes their behaviors put us in a bind where how do we keep them safe moving into adulthood? And so I'd love for you to continue with the younger kids, because that's my hope as well, is, if we can craft our environment to their neuro needs, whether that's traumatic brain injury, whether that's genetic, whether that's, developmental trauma, or a mix of all three of those, these folks can, contribute in ways that I think are remarkable.
I agree with you 100%. And actually, your book, the book that you co-authored, I don't know if I'm supposed to mention that or not.
Oh, please do. Oh, you can spend as much time as you want talking about the book.
That book shows your dedication, your enthusiasm, the way you look at education. And it's a book. Every time I pick it up, I learn something from. It's one of my treasured research. I just pick it up. I have it right here, and it's really exactly what I'm doing. A trauma sensitive school.
Yeah.
All right. This is it, and it's so helpful. Anyway.
Thank you.
It's a beautiful book. It's really well done. So,
and I'll just give a shout out to my wife, Sarah, too. So, yes, I have that educator in the house as well. So, I'll throw her name out, Peggy and Sarah. So,
okay. All right. So in our work with children on the spectrum. So behaviors, we have behaviors. We have children that just put their head down and go into a shell, and we have children that jump up and start climbing on the bookshelves and just climbing up. Why do they do these things? And so what do we do normally? Well, we tell them to come down, then we raise our voices, and then we take them to a sensory room maybe, or put them in the blue room to take a break, or while the academics is going on. But what are they telling us? Maybe they're telling us that the way we're presenting the academics is they're not seeing it. They're not, and they feel there's something wrong with them, and they really just want out of there. They just want, and they know that kind of behavior will bring attention. It'll get you attention right away. You don't have to wait at all. It just boom. And so we spend time doing that. The rest of the class, of course, they lose the academic thing. They're watching what's going on, all this. You got people chasing and then more kids get fired up and the whole thing. So, okay. Or we can try these. The way I look at autism, there's an intersection between autism and trauma,
Mm-hmm.
because an autistic child could have a litany of traumas. I mean, so many things can be traumatic. So many situations could have occurred at home. A disabled child sometimes, I mean, it's very hard for a household to handle that situation. And sometimes there's more than one child. And it just can be, the trauma can occur there, no question about it. So that being said, what's the condition of their autonomic nervous system, their ANS? Where is it? My gosh. Do they even have access to their cognitive? Maybe not. Maybe not. Actually, it doesn't take long to find out if they do or not.
Yeah.
So you so what do? I get the unit out, and we test a certain presentation on a student to see how the student reacts. And if, for example, we see that low frequency ramping up and up and up to a hyper state, then that's a stress response. So this assignment or this worksheet is triggering a stress response in that child. And that can also be the same for a book. It could be a book that talks about going out with dad for a day at the beach or whatever, and something happened with dad, and that thing just ramps up. They're gone for the day at least at that point.
Mm-hmm.
When that, you get these big numbers, 140,000 and all the, on the LF. And so but okay, gives me an opportunity to stop. I stop, present it, change the book, the next book. You still have the armband on.
Okay. Yep.
You got your tablet there and you're watching, and it comes down.
It's awesome.
It comes down. Yeah. And now the next book, we read it. Your cognitive is working, it's engaged. What happens? We question back. Well, how about? So what happened? Where did they go? They went to the zoo. Okay. And what animal did they see? Oh, the giraffe. And what was that like? And they comes back. Conversation now.
Mm-hmm.
They're able to communicate. None of this could have happened if we because that other scenario I told you about climbing the filing cabinet there.
Yep.
That's what would have happened.
Yep.
But it didn't happen.
Yeah.
So why?
John, if I could just I think I would love to kind of ask a quick follow-up to that too, is sure. One of the things that the population that we're discussing taught me was like that dysregulation, the environment, stimulus and environment, not chosen behaviors a lot of times. And what I loved about them is you knew the behavior was happening. Like there was no passive aggressiveness. There was no, this person just say, nope, they're climbing up a bookshelf or throwing the books at me. Like there's such a visceral level of feedback. And I love how you're using heart rate variability to sort of track like, okay, the differences between the material, because here we go, right? There's something in this book and you may not even have identified exactly what that variable is, but it gives you just such a level of insight is something's triggering an unconscious stress response. It's not a chosen behavior. If we punish the heck out of it, it's not going to extinguish the behavior. And I just wanted to make the quick point is, this can show up in our team meetings in the corporate environment. This can show up at the Oscars. This can, while the behaviors might not be as obvious, what really taught me from this population is that the impact of the environment and these variables on that unconscious part of our nervous system, which shows up during biofeedback, mindfulness sessions, can really help to put the behavior and content that this isn't the quote unquote in education bad kid, right? This is not a bad child. This is a child. We just haven't really figured out how we can create the environment where this child can thrive.
Exactly. That's exactly that sums it up right there.
Yeah,
absolutely. So yeah, we can tailor our work to that specific child, and it's not difficult. It's not difficult. We keep monitoring and keep looking at that ANS and adjusting, and finally we get to that sweet spot, and before you know it, we've got the kid who used to, as soon as you gave him something that he didn't want, you'd get a headbutt or a bite or something. Now what happens is you look at that child and you could tell him the same thing, and he'll just look at it and smile and say, or maybe, maybe I'd rather do this. Okay. It's fine. And the relationship is building. And so what happens is that fear of social interaction that you find with the ASD impacted child, that fear just calms down and starts to go away. And it's just amazing. And it really is. So that, and I could have not, and now, optimal HRV, I think it's time to talk about optimal HR a little bit, because I wouldn't be doing any of this. I tried doing this with other pieces of equipment, and it just wasn't working because the sensor and optimal HRV. As soon as I talked to you, or actually talked to, I sent Ina, I think, email, and Jeff contacted me, and before you know it, I had a sensor that fit on the arm. And now I say, well, it's time to breathe, and the children come out with their arms out like that.
That's awesome.
That was
I
going to
love
be
it.
one of my questions for you, John. There's a lot of folks that have reached out with concern, that work with similar populations, and say, hey, I'm a little nervous about the device that we need to use to track. So it sounds like your experience has not been bad at all.
Not been bad. No, it's been amazing, far exceeding my expectations.
The kids are happy to put it on, and happy.
In all honesty, I work with another company for 3 years prior, and asked for something, and they just, I can't do it. It's they take a third party. We can't do that. And so okay. And it was what, a week, 10 days, and I was up and running, and I was grabbing so much data, and I was able to do this continuously monitoring the ANS on these individual students, continuously do it without any stress or loss of time, because I'm always working with them. And so I'm using it differently. I'm not training them, so to speak. We're not, that will come.
Yeah.
There are two students that have been working with HRV for some time, about a year, and they actually can train. They actually, in the morning, a lot of times, that's the first thing we do is we train with them. And also and they're only I think 7 and 9.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, and we train with them, and we take their HRV for the day. I said, wow, you're going to have a great day. And now these are children that are impacted, but they're going to gen ed. That doesn't happen very often, that, Matthew. Yeah. That doesn't happen that often, really. We have 4 children. One's moving out of ASD, going to level, and we have 3 going to gen ed.
That is
That's
amazing.
amazing.
And
Congrats.
it couldn't happen without HRV, and it couldn't happen without monitoring that ANS and letting go of the drama. You know, we just gave up on the drama, and when we decided to go in a direction.
Such good life lessons for everybody there, right?
Yeah. So
That's fantastic.
So exciting. I mean, I just got goosebumps all over, because this is, you know, I have this, you know, and we're still in such a time, I would say, especially in education, where it's innovation. Like you know, I have dreams of like a HRV informed classroom, like how we can, because social emotional education, especially for students with trauma, you know, well, whether autism is a part of that or not. I mean, we're just failing those students in traditional education, and there's so much great work being done to rectify that. I just think that everything you said, if a teacher could have that information, if you know, a para could work with a teacher to monitor that, if this could be part of social emotional education to help students quantify their emotional states, because we ask sometimes very young children to give us feedback on how they're doing internally, and I'm totally supportive of that, but we kind of don't have a way to adjust that, you know, of how those transitions go from the lunchroom to the hallway to, you know, for my special ed students, that those were so difficult. Could we do those? Could we keep them in general ed if we just let them transition in a different way? And all those things that you're talking about, I really see you as a pioneer in this. Here's how to do this with historically population we haven't been all that successful with, if we're going to be honest, educationally. And I just, you know, I'm just so thrilled to work with you, because what you say, I think, translates into all kinds of different students who might be struggling academically. Maybe their behaviors are fine, but their ANS, it's hard to focus. Maybe it's ADHD, you know, all these, maybe it's trauma or a combination, because all these things we put labels on that are often way more connected than our labels account for. And could we help get these children off these medication regimens that, and I'm not anti-medication, I've seen medication change life, but I'm sure you've seen in this population too. You look at the medication regimen, it's just like, well, this failed, so let's try something else. But we never took them off the thing that wasn't working. We just add and add and add. And, you know, if we could, you know, at least limit the side effects of some of those, again, not anti-medication by any stretch, but, you know, if this medication isn't improving heart rate variability, maybe it's not the right medication, and maybe we could try something else, you know, and be just not piling on 8 medications. I could tell you some horror stories about the number of medications a lot of our students had got on by the time age 18 hit them. So I'm just so excited about what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you.
So
Yeah,
I would
awesome.
love to ask a question. Where do you see this going? The technology is only going to get better. I know we just got off a call with our developers. The app's only going to get better. The readers are only going to get better. So where do you, as you look at sort of being new to this field, relatively new, even though I know you got some years of experience now behind you, what do you see looking ahead about where this could really impact education?
Well, right now in our classroom, I work with a teacher. She actually has 2 sons that are impacted, and she is an ASD expert, you know, and all this work that we're doing is happening in her classroom, and we are having remarkable success. Now, in our district, what I want to see happen in, you know, it has to start somewhere.
Yeah.
What I want to see happen in our district is I want all the ASD and level rooms to operate the same way, using using a monitoring system for the students' ANS and tailoring the work, continuously tailoring the work for it. And it's not difficult to do. It's not difficult to do. There's so much curriculum available that being able to tailor it for and keep them moving along, because we're there for the student. The student's not there for us. I mean, we don't have to, we can't demand the student to act like a neurotypical. Well, yeah. I mean, that's what we've been doing as far as and then finally, when it gets to a point where we've decided, well, they're not going to act like a neurotypical. So then we give up on them and just, well, we'll keep them happy. Well, you know, would you like a Skittle? Have a Skittle and take a break. Yeah. And so we don't have to do any of that. We can continually work with a child, all populations, as you say, ASD. There are students out there who it's said, oh, they're cognitively impaired. They should be in the CI classroom. Turns out they suffer from a lot of anxiety, and they can't connect with their cognitive. We had a student like that who for 2 years was in a cognitively impaired category, and next year, his third grade, he's Gen Ed, and he's
amazing.
Yeah, he had so much. It was a English was his second language, and he was so much anxiety about speaking and being self-conscious and that kinds of thing. Once we got that worked out, and he started to read he started to read, and his level picked up, and he's going to Gen Ed.
That's amazing. I love it. And I just love what you're. No, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, this is, and this is a time in elementary to really zero in on it. And just we have the tools, and I know the pharmaceutical industry, and they, and all and some of the pharmaceutical interventions, some of them are good, but there's way too much of it. And like you say, it's like, well, let's take a shot at this. Let's try this. Well, we don't have to do that anymore. No, we can zero right in on what we want to help, where we want to help this child, how we want to help this child, put a plan together and implement it that same day. So, and the whole classroom, then the level of the classroom, the vibrational level, because if you know that each individual has that electromagnetic field around them, where they're and so when you get somebody that's up there in the frequencies that are not in the 1 hertz, in balance with the earth, then things start to, so the classroom's somewhere else, and you want to be in a situation where a coherent learning kind of environment is created, and that is not it's not that difficult to do with any population of child. So
awesome. That's so great. And I think the last statement, John, is really interesting too. I mean, just the application in general education, not just the specific population that you're working with, that Matt's worked with so much in the past, but folks that are in education that might be listening. There's interesting applications here across the board. So hopefully some other folks are you get the wheels turning. I'm sure that's going to be the case. It's just a super cool story. And
if you're in education and you're not using this modality, you're just not coming to the job fully equipped. That's the bottom line.
I love it. And I mean, as somebody who was stuck with the behaviors, like I had this whole plan, I could never get it funded, of using like Palm Pilots back in 2002 to track behaviors, because we couldn't really get under the skin, and knowing that what the behaviors we saw, what I wanted to do was track environmental stimulus around the behavior and hone in on it. But, looking inside the skin at the core of why the behavior happens, when you talk about quality outcomes and just increasing our ability to help understand what this individual needs to be successful. I mean, it just saves so much time. And with this population, we want to get them back in general education. We want them to be successful in that classroom and support the educators in helping them be successful. And that's why I'm just so excited about what you're doing, because, not having that, we just had to fail so many more times before we found that right mix of relational support or occupational therapy or sensory stimulation, all these different things of what works for that individual. So it's so exciting what you're doing. I would love to kind of lead us out, Jeff, unless you got anything else to follow up with this. But I want to take advantage of this to ask a little bit of a different question on this, because one of the things that I think we're sometimes missing with our and let's just talk about the business world, whether that business is education, whether that's automotive world. But one of the things that I think we've also not done a great job in our diversity conversations historically is talking about neurodiversity. I know it's something that we've thought a lot about. I've connected with some great organizations in the computer development world that employ folks with autism and setting up environments where they succeed. So if I could just throw out a question that you may not have thought anything about, but I got to take the opportunity. Having had your feet solidly in the corporate world for a lot of your career, and having also worked with those 18 to 21-year-olds, I would just love if you have any advice for people that might not be in education, but might be in the position to hire folks that, have this neurodiverse background and what they might be able to do to diversify their workforce in a way that's going to also make them a better business and sort of maximize some of the unique skills that this population that we both love could bring to their culture.
Well, HRV training. Okay, in the business world, that's a real interesting situation, because in the business world, it's this very, it's very competitive, right? It's very competitive. People even that are on the same team compete with each other.
Yes.
Stress is a huge factor. Stress and anxiety. So now, this is in HR. This is leaking into HR. Yeah. So these individuals that make the decision in HR about whether or not we're going to hire somebody who is on the spectrum or not, or has this disability or that one, they don't want to be the one that did it and then it turns out to be a failure or something, So where the first thing that has to happen, this is my opinion. This is the first thing that has to happen, is that these teams, these HR teams and the individual teams in a corporate organization, they need HRV training. They need HRV training so that their they go to rather than a reaction when they hear something, they have a response. They need to access, they're in fight flight more than you think. They're in that limbic system more than you think. And that is a problem. And so those teams, those neurotypical teams, need HRV. At that point, their cognitive will help them see the advantages of having a neurodiverse organization, the power that will give them. But they're not going to see it right away. But with HRV training, and I think, that is the number one thing that restricts people, that stress, that and a lot of it is that they go right to fight flight and right to fight or flight and freeze or whatever.
Yeah, and I would just say, well, what I learned too, I don't know if you've seen this, and this is, I think, a huge lesson for the corporate world as well, is what works for the population we're talking about works for us too. Like it's almost like, I learned self-soothing like through this, if you're like, I just thought, okay, if we can create a business environment where a neurodiverse population can thrive, like I said, if you create a trauma-sensitive classroom, it just doesn't allow a population that we've failed with historically to succeed. It really is great for everybody's neurobiology as well. So while some of the behaviors or, frustrations that might hit one worker or a student might be a little bit more obvious, really we're talking about a neuro-friendly environment where everybody can thrive. And there's almost the opposite going on, I think, in a lot of corners of the business world right now, that there's a huge lesson here. And I would just encourage our business listeners to say, these folks will teach you so much, and you create an environment where they can thrive. That investment is going to pay off with everybody, because you're just going to have a healthier workforce. So these folks are, to me, as I like to say, and I know we're getting close to time here, they've been my greatest teachers. Like I've got master's degrees psychology. Probably about the first week working with this population, I learned just as much as I did in 3 years of grad school. So they are great teachers. And again, what the lessons learned there just translate so well. I have a weighted blanket I sleep under every night because I saw that regulation works so well for this population. It's like, well, why not? I'm not a great sleeper. Why not try this? And I'll never give that up. Those sort of things. Bouncing. I just saw a bouncy chair change several students' lives when they got regulated. And now I do bouncing. Like I just jump up and down a little bit when I get stressed out, shake it off. Those lessons have been so important to me.
They're good lessons.
It's amazing.
Yes, we definitely learn a lot from that population. No question.
Awesome.
Well, John, this has been so great. I think our listeners are just going to take a lot of encouragement and excitement from the great work that you're doing. Hopefully it opens some minds, gets some folks that are in education thinking about how they can start to do some of the things that you are. Really just appreciate the time sharing your story with us and all of our listeners.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity. It never would have happened if you hadn't provided me with that sensor. So that really made a change. So thanks so much. I had the concept, but I didn't have the tools. All the tools. I need that last piece. And since I've got that last piece, we are moving ahead. So thank you so much.
Awesome.
No, thank you, John. Really appreciate it. Excellent. Such a pleasure. Thanks to everybody for tuning in today. Hopefully, this was certainly an enlightening episode for me. So I'm sure all of our listeners will agree. So thanks. As usual, anybody's interested, www.optimalhrv.com. Feel free to reach out. We're always looking for other folks trying to accomplish what John is. So thanks, everybody.